I've never had a friendship like this.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Virtual and candid and raw. We talk about business. We talk about family. We talk about drama. We talk about flipping people off in the middle of a parking lot where the others go, yeah, I get that. What has this Voxer thing done for you?
For me, it just feels like it's our little hangout place. It's almost like our virtual fire pit where we can still continue those conversations.
It's like it's 90% of it for us is the voice messages.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's like an ongoing asynchronous and sometimes synchronous conversation. One of the reasons I think it works, which is not exactly what you asked, but this will give people an idea of our conversations. No, I'm not giving you the answer you asked for. I'm just talking about something related. But I have so much respect and admiration for the two of you. And so I don't think any of it would work if that wasn't in place. Like, it's this great mix of your professional accomplishments, your mindset. And I think one of the things we've circled back to is we kind of complain, but it's never static. It's always as part of a journey to improve and to be better and to feel better. And there are no excuses. Nobody gets stuck. But having said that, it's also sort of gracious, and we give each other grace to find our way through things. I have found it's just helped me process so many of the day-to-day things in work, in life, in health that we all are dealing with.
Yeah. And I've heard from people, mostly my kids, why do you use that app and not just text?
Right.
And there is that real time, right? So like if you're leaving a message, I can actually hear that message in real time and then respond. It's also made me a better podcaster, I think, a better listener, because sometimes it's not what's being said, it's what's not being said. Does that make sense?
It's almost like having the talking stick, because two people cannot ever talk at the same time.
Right. We've tried.
Yes.
What about you, Jen? What has it done for you?
I think it's given me a place to talk through things that maybe like I feel stuck somewhere, or I'm like, I don't know what to do about this or how to handle this situation. And sometimes just verbalizing and talking it out helps a lot. But the other piece of that too is sometimes I just want a place to vent. And you all are so gracious for allowing me to do that. I think it's a nice thing that we do for each other. And sometimes it is, hey, have you come up against this? How did you handle it? What do you think? And it's nice to have that from people, like going back to what Marion said, people that I respect, people that I know are, even if not necessarily doing the same work, like adjacent work.
Yeah.
And people that have had like all of this different life experience. I mean, you guys just bring so much to it, and I'm just so grateful for it.
I think one of the huge things is that we don't have any baggage with each other.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't really know each other. And so we can tell stories from our childhood or from now and our relationships and parenting, whatever. And there's none of that. Like, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we are at the place, like, who we are today is how the other two show up.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not holding each other back to who someone has determined you are.
Right.
I love that. And I that's such a great way to frame it, which is what you're so good at. This is what happens in all our conversations. And I think also related to that is like, we know the stories aren't going to come back to us. You know what I mean? We're in different social circles. I mean, we know some of the same people, but in day to day, our social circles, it probably helps that we're in separate circles. So, you know, none of it's going to come back to you in some strange way.
Totally. And I feel like you're right. Every morning when I wake up, I drink my coffee and I do Quordle and Wordle, and then I listen to the two of you. And I'm still in bed. Some people have other habits. Jen, you're always journaling and meditating and all that. And like, there's something about your energy that just puts me in this mind space of like connection before I even get out of bed. Like, I am connected to other human beings, whether I see any other people or not today. So it's really cool. In October of 2021, I attended She Podcasts Live. I highly recommend it if you're a podcaster and you want to connect with other women and non-binary podcasters. There's another one coming up in June. At that event, I ran into a couple of women I knew through work we had done with Elsie Escobar, who is one of the founders. I remember it perfectly. I had a cold. I had just arrived. I was feeling pretty crappy. And they were sitting around a table outside the pool area. And immediately we just started talking about the podcasting industry and creativity and just all of these personal and professional things. It was amazing. And then at night, we all sat around the fire pit and continued the conversation, while we were also serenaded by Jen as she played some of her amazing original songs. And then we went home, like you do, and we started using Voxer. It's this walkie-talkie app where you can send text and photos and links and talk in real time. I actually use it for clients all the time. And given the other women are also podcasters, it makes sense to use an app where we can all use our actual voices. And by the way, Voxer is not a sponsor or a partner or anything in this episode, although they probably should be. So flash forward 15 months, I'm still having daily conversations with these incredible women. They have become friends, confidants, creative sounding boards, truth tellers. They've brought so much to my life. And my favorite part, they are not afraid to hold me accountable. That is one of the themes for 2023 for me, personal accountability. Historically, I've struggled with this, but I'm doing so much better at it, like showing up for myself, doing what I said I was going to do. It just feels better. If this is something you struggle with, I am working on creating a small accountability group in the coming weeks. Email me if you want to learn more at hello@grownasswoman.guide. But if personal accountability is something you have dialed in, I want to hear about it. Join our Facebook group or find me on Instagram or Twitter and tell me about it. I will link to all those places in the show notes. I would love to hear how you have incorporated personal accountability into your life, like how you show up for yourself, how you count on yourself. If you have some tips and tricks you want to share with the rest of us, definitely find me on social media. You're listening to the Grown Ass Woman's Guide. I'm your host, Jackie McDougall. Welcome back. Today, I'm talking with two incredible women, as you know, Marion Abrams and Jen Edds. Marion is a podcast host, producer, consultant. She knows the industry inside and out. She is like the go-to expert, I'm telling you right now. Jen is also a podcast host, producer, and consultant, but she's also a singer-songwriter who does keynote speeches with a twist. She sings while playing her ukulele. Recently, as we chatted on Voxer, as we do, about the year ahead, we were talking about which word or words would guide us through 2023. For me, it's all about flow this year. No more forcing stuff to happen and just that hustle and that like trying to make things happen that aren't meant to happen. I'm done. I'm just trying to pay a little more attention and going with what's aligned and feels good. So let's dive into the flow of the conversation with Jen and Marion. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is because we talk about so many things that I think the greater audience would benefit from. I've been doing this whole like word for the new year for probably like the past 10 years or so. And then of course, Marion brings it in like a new perspective on that.
So I was thinking about this as we were getting ready for this call, this whole kind of conversation that we've had about New Year's resolutions, about self-development, about the negative messages that can come with that. And one of the things that's nice about the one word or the three words is that it's not a resolution. It's just a point of focus, you know? So it's not like there's no pressure on it. And so for me, I got this from Chris Brogan, and the more I mention it, the more people are like, oh my God, yeah, I got that from Chris Brogan too. I do that too. Like it's really grown. And one of the cool things is he's not a life coach. He's not selling anything. He just does it and he shares it. And so the idea is you pick three words that will guide you in the next year. And the key thing is that you need to keep them in front of you. So whether you repeat them when you go for a walk in your mind, or you write them on the whiteboard, or you put them on the refrigerator, or you journal them in the morning, or put them on your wake up screen on the iPhone or something, so that they stay in your mind. And so what's great is thinking about when we started this Voxer group over the last 2 years, two of the words that have been in my set of words were, 1 year it was friendship and 1 year it was collaboration. And so when I'm thinking, is this something worth starting? Is this something worth putting energy to? it's an easy decision, right? Because I say, well, this is one of my priorities, should I, watch a movie or should I get on Voxer and see what everybody's doing? Well, my word for this year was friendship. So I'm going to get on Voxer. So it's not like a pressure. It just helps you make those day-to-day decisions. And I've found it has in hindsight had a huge impact. Like when you look back at where you were to where you are, I think moving in the direction based on those words. And the 3 words is kind of good. Like sometimes I only make movement on 2 of them or, but it just gives me a little bit of flexibility, but also guidance.
Yeah. So Marion, do you want to share your 3 words for this year?
No.
That's another thing I love about our group is we have boundaries, man. We're like, I'll give you this. I won't give you that.
Yes. Yes.
Are you going to keep them to yourself?
I might share them in our group.
Okay, cool.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, so Marion, are you tracking those 3 words? Like, are you journaling? How are you making sure that you're living the 3 words?
Yeah. So what I have done in the past, for example, friendship was like a powerful one for me. I had moved to a new town. And so every morning when I journal, I would start by writing the 3 words. And so actually last year it was plan, earn, connect. And so I was really thinking about, I'd never been much of a planner. And so I just sort of, I always did the next thing. So I really wanted to learn how to have a bigger plan, set bigger goals and work towards them. And then earn, of course, I just wanted to think about making more money last year. That was important. And then connect, which is what we're doing here. And so for me, what I would do is in the beginning of the year, I just wrote the 3 words in my journal every morning. And sometimes all I wrote in the journal was that, or sometimes I would get a little further. Towards the end of the year, I came up with a structure where I would write the 3 words, plan, earn, connect. And then I would think about that day and I would think, what am I doing today that relates to these 3 words? So it might be plan. Well, I have a workshop on Friday. I'm going to set the outline for it. Or it might be, I'm looking for a new job. I'm going to plan, this element of it. And then earn, I would think, what am I doing today for that? Oh, I'm going to go through my accounts receivables and do some follow-up calls. And then connect. And I would think, okay, here's 3 people I haven't talked to in a while. I'm going to send them a text message. That's more structured than I usually am, but that really helped me kind of set a focus for the day. That's
really cool. I remember in 2020, I did this and connect was my word or connection. And then the universe was like, I should have written internet connection.
Yeah, right.
But then last year I went with your 3 words and I did align, simplify, and sparkle.
I love that.
Because I think we're afraid to sparkle.
I love sparkle so much.
I don't think I did as well, aligning with my words. I will say I think I did align, simplify, and sparkle more than other previous years, but I don't think they were like the guiding focus for me.
Yeah.
What about you, Jen? Do you have a word or 3 words this year?
I've got 3 words for this year. My first word is simplify.
Oh,
which is funny.
Nice.
Yeah. Simplify, commit, and do.
Wow.
Because I think of all the things that I want to do, but then in the past I have lacked that commitment and then things don't actually get done.
Simplify, commit, and do.
I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
So if we were in the Voxer group and there weren't people listening, I would say, Jen, you give yourself a hard time for not doing. Just for example, what did you do this morning before we get on this call?
I went to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class.
And what else?
Oh, I journaled and I meditated.
Yeah, you don't do anything.
Yeah.
I do things, but one of the things that I've said in the past that I was going to do was be more consistent with my podcast and with making YouTube videos. And that did not happen last year because I get distracted because there's so many things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And that is why simplify is the first word. So it's kind of like simplify / focus.
Yeah.
So,
you know, it's interesting. I don't know where this came from, and I did it a couple of years ago, and now I forgot until you said that this morning. When I was like putting something off, I would literally say out loud to myself, well, obviously it's not that much of a priority.
yeah.
And then I would actually pay attention to my body. Like, I want to move 30 minutes a day. And then I'm sitting there at 3:00 and I'm like, obviously it's not a priority. And I'm like, yes, it is. Like I get into an argument with myself, and then I get on the bike or I go for a walk.
It's
whatever
your inner
it is.
contrarian that you need to, now you know how to motivate yourself is to be driven by the inner contrarian.
Yeah. And so if you say to yourself like, oh, doing a regular podcast, like it's not my priority, you might actually go, oh yeah, it's not. I think I'd like to focus on YouTube right now.
Yeah. And I've had those conversations with myself. I was like, yeah, I guess it really not at the top of the priority list.
Isn't it hard to figure out whether you're really listening to yourself or whether you're making excuses to yourself?
Yes. We could do a whole episode just on that. When are you trusting your gut and when are you making an excuse?
Yeah.
Yeah. That discernment piece is tough.
Yeah.
That's one of the things our group is so good about, right? I think I was thinking about that too. You know, before I have one of these podcast interviews, I'm always thinking like, okay, how am I feeling about the things that we're talking about? And one of them was back to the value of that group. There's friendship and there's support, but you guys will also call me on stuff. What I have learned is that a good friend is one that will tell you the truth. And so I feel like the two of you would say, Marion, maybe you need to give yourself a break. Or you might also say like, are you sure that it's not important to you, or is there something else going on?
Right. But I think you nailed it because it's questions.
Yes.
That's how we get deeper in this friendship is we ask deeper questions. I mean, and we've all had that friend where you share something like, well, this is because you feel like this and and you're like, okay, well, I guess you just solved my life, you know, but we tend to ask more.
Yeah.
And then as Jen started so eloquently at the beginning, like sometimes we just need to hear ourselves and then we actually solve it within ourselves. You know, like when you hear yourself say something out loud and you're like, wait a second, I don't want this client.
Yeah, right.
I don't need you two to tell me that I don't want this client. I just heard myself.
Yeah.
Can I say something else I've learned from you guys in that group?
Yes, please.
It's just from both of your example, how to be a good listener and how to respond and how to encourage in such a positive way. I think you both do that and provide a great model.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
So if someone's listening right now and, you know, she's like, oh, that's fine and good for you all. You have this Voxer group where you can be yourselves and talk openly and share your challenges and support each other. I don't have that. Do you have any tips? Like this happened really organically, right? And I could not have manifested this. I could not, well, maybe I did manifest it. I could not have like written it out on my vision board. Like I would like to have a group of friends on a walkie-talkie app where I can show up as myself. So what kind of advice would you give someone who's like, I would like to have this?
I think you have to put yourself out there. Had I not been sitting by the fire pit, had I not gone to She Podcast, had Alex and I not just plopped down by the fire pit and then you two just showed up and hung out and like that was it, you have to go to the places where your people are.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I think that's such a good one. And I think, I mean, you're right. We never would have guessed that this would happen. But I think all of us, I mean, we talk about this, like these words like friendship and connection were in our orbit and we were being intentional about the little choices, right? And the little choices like, I'm tired, I had a long flight, would I rather just hide in my room and watch TV for 2 hours? No, there's people out there that I want to get to know. I'm going to make that little choice to go sit by the fire, or I'm going to make that choice to start a conversation, or it's those little choices that's where I like the idea of the word, right? We all had these intentions, whether through a word or through just what we were wanting in our lives. And I think we can't guarantee that we'll end up with the Voxer group, but we can make the little choices day to day that move us in that right direction. Like Jen was saying, like putting yourself out there, going to the event where the people are, but also when you have the choice, do I talk to the person I already know or the new person? Do I start a conversation or do I read my book? All those little choices that we make.
Yeah. But I think also that it was like we sort of knew each other, not really. And then we sat down and then we sort of blocked out the rest of the people for the rest of the trip.
For sure. Yeah.
And I wouldn't recommend that every time because then that's all you have. Although I'm ready to go back to She Podcast and just hang out with you guys again.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people I know, podcasters, who are like, why would I go to a conference? I don't need to know how to monetize my podcast. I don't need to know how to write better show notes or whatever it is. And it's not even about the content. I mean, the content's amazing, and there are many, many things that you can learn that you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's the connections with other women in the industry. Now it's like an ad for She Podcast, but the connection with other women in the industry who go through similar things. Like Jen, you were saying, it's not the same, but it's adjacent. And so there are some things that we've all gone through in 2022. I don't want to focus too much on last year, but how did 2022 change you that you're moving into 2023 in a more positive way?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Well, Jen, I'm going to call you forward.
Okay.
At the beginning of the year, you wanted to, or you were expressing your desire to play music. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, Jen is a brilliant musician. She wrote an album in how much time? Recorded an album?
Like 60. The whole songwriting piece was its own practice. And then when I got booked to speak at She Podcast, I was like, oh, I should probably make an album. Like instead of a PDF or a slide deck, I'll just make an album instead. That's more fun.
As you do.
Said the woman who
As you
doesn't
do.
enough.
Right? Exactly.
So that's how the album came out within just like a couple of, it was fast.
But then at the beginning of 2022, I remember you sharing that you want to do more speaking gigs. And I kind of use the air quotes because you actually perform. You're like a musical Mel Robbins.
That is like the best compliment ever.
I like that.
I'll take
It's
it.
true.
Because you share these like, oh yeah, she's got such a great point, but you're doing it through entertainment, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying like, I want to get up there. I want to be a keynote. I want to perform.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now going into 2023, you are a professional. You get paid
Yes.
to do these talks.
Yeah.
Or what would you call them then? They're not talks.
Musical keynote.
Yeah. Musical keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm just getting this conversation started of like, what have we learned in 2022 that we're taking in? You're doing this thing. How did you get there from a year ago going, I'd really like to do that?
I kind of just started doing it. So I know some people here locally and they're like, oh, come join this organization and we'll like get you in front of people. And I had some trepidation about that. It felt kind of like pay to play, but I was like, I've said I want to do this. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and actually try to do this and see what happens. And there were some opportunities, like they weren't what I had hoped, but that's fine. And then I know that there was one opportunity where you all actually helped me process through this when I came in venting. I was like, they billed me as like the opening act and I was so mad. And like, I only got 15 minutes and the other speakers got longer and like, wah, wah, wah. Like this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen in my life. And just being able to talk through that with both of you, then it was like, oh, wait, this is only 15 minutes. I could do this all day long. Like, this is a piece of cake. And I finally wrapped my head around this is going to be the best 15 minutes of their lives. And those other two are not going to want to follow me. And I just kind of reframed it that this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to do that same talk, that same 15 minutes, because it turns out that's a thing. Sometimes people only want 15 minutes. They don't want 45 or an hour. They just want something to actually be the opener, to kick it off, to set the tone of the event or the day. And I'm like, oh, that's my jam. I could do that all day. Mm-hmm. And now I get to do it again in January. I've already booked one. So it is a thing, which is really funny because later, like in this past year, I was like, okay, I'm not going to really push that. If it happens, it happens. And now I've done it and it's been out in the universe and now it's starting to come back.
You know what I love about this story too, is the way you tell it, it sounds so sequential, but you skipped. Like, remember how hard you were working on a musical keynote for an event that got canceled?
Yes.
And you had put, every time we talked about, what are you working on? What are you working on? For you, it was that keynote. And you were putting your heart and soul into it. and the event got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's so easy to talk about how there's hurdles and there's failures and there's obstacles, but to see it and then to see you rebound and then to see you keep going and then to see you be successful and to feel it, right? Because it's so easy to say like, oh, there's failure on the way to success. That all sounds good. But then when you apply for the job or you have the keynote you worked on get canceled, you're like, I guess this really wasn't a good idea after all.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy to just turn around.
Yeah.
And to see you keep doing it and to see where it took you is such a good model for all of us.
Thanks. Yeah, I do kind of skip over things at times.
Absolutely. But also if you didn't have that deadline of the event that got canceled,
Right.
would you have completed it the way you did?
Right.
No.
Because that's what I need, a deadline. I need
Yes.
I need to be working towards something. I need to see it at the end on the calendar in red. And another thing that I've really learned, I sort of knew in the back of my head, but you have reminded me, Jen, is that how many people are in that room when you do that keynote? 20, maybe up to 100. That's a very small number of people. Do that again in another room, and again in another room, and again in another room. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel
Exactly.
every single time. And I think we tend to, especially as creatives, oh, I better create something totally different. Oh, I better translate this into 5 languages for it to be valuable. And it's like, no, just reach more people. Or if someone's already seen it or heard it, they'll hear it differently the second time.
So true.
That one is so key. I think about it like a spiral staircase, right? And there's like information on every wall.
Uh-huh.
And so as you go around, you see the same stuff, but you're like seeing it from a different vantage point and you're
Yes.
continuing to like grow and elevate.
I'm getting dizzy.
And I think it's like so many podcasters too are like, well, I've kind of said, like they'll start on a topic and they'll say like, I've kind of said it all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, but people, number one, new people need to hear it. And number two, the same people need to hear it again. I mean, I need to hear the same stuff over and over and over again.
Right. Right. And even just like I've done 170 something episodes of this podcast. And I just did one.
Right. You're like, but I said it once ever in my life. So everyone should know it.
Right. And yet in your real life, you would never say, oh, I said that once. I'm never going to have to say it again, especially
Right.
if you have a significant other.
Right.
Or children.
Exactly. I just think it's the lessons that are learned from your keynote, Jen, and from other things. Like we listen to them again or we go through them again and we hear something different and we learn something different because we are someone different
Yeah.
than the person we were the first time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I could talk about Ted Lasso. You know this every day, all day.
I'm here for that.
Yeah. I've gone through that entire series probably 4 times.
Wow.
Because whenever somebody new was like, oh, I've never seen it, I'm like, come on over, you know? And I get something different. Like, oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Or I'll put on the captions because sometimes those British accents are hard.
Yes.
And then I'll catch jokes that I didn't even catch. So I think it's interesting. Marion, let's go back to you. What is something you learned about yourself or the world in 2022 that you are carrying into 2023?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to this theme of leaning on smart friends. And I'm going to publish an episode of my show in a couple days. And I interviewed Greg Clunas. And one of the things he talked about, like he put some data on it. He built an app that was like a habit tracker and it let you get a partner. You didn't even know the person, but you could just see that they were trying to do their habit and putting a check mark and you would do your same. And the people who chose to have a partner had 150% increase in their likelihood of achieving the task they had chosen versus those that didn't.
Wow.
And he brought it to a social scientist, behavioral scientist, who was like, yep, that's what we see. And it's not anything we don't know, right? But it just seeing those numbers was like, holy cow. And for me in my personal life, I have the friendship with you guys, which is daily. And then I have a couple of groups that meet once a week, 2 groups that meet once a week where they all have a little bit of a different structure. But I don't think I would have gotten from where I was a year ago to where I am now without that. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have.
Can you give a little bit about where you were a year ago and what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of pieces to it. It's the last couple of years have been a pretty exciting and interesting growth and change time for me, from moving to a new town, my kids are getting older, and the career thing. And so for me, I started about 2 years ago getting, you know, the expression, never let them know you know how to type. You know, you've all heard that, like, and so it's the idea that, like, if you're good at typing, then all you're going to do is type. And I know that's not as relevant now, but
it is for our age.
yeah, right. So I didn't type, but I was getting known for the person who knew how to set up the microphone and push the buttons on the camera and do the technical stuff. And I could do that, but it wasn't because that's what I loved or it was what I was great at. It was because, like, if you're a painter, you have to know what brush to use and what paint to use. Like, it was just the thing I had to learn in order to achieve the results I wanted. And what I realized was that was how people saw my abilities. And it frustrated me because I felt like I was being overlooked and I wasn't getting the opportunities that I was qualified for, you know? And so I started this sort of campaign to rebrand myself, which meant a lot of growth around getting comfortable being on camera, starting my own podcast. This is over a couple of year process, but really it accelerated in the last year. And not hiding behind the tech too. It was really easy to make a video and say, like, this is the microphone you use and how you plug it in. Because nobody's going to say that's not right. Or you're, you know, whereas when you're saying, like, here's my idea, you know, here's my, like, strategy, here's my feelings, right? That's much more vulnerable. And so I really pushed myself to do more of that stuff and even do it when it wasn't getting, it's going to perform better on YouTube if I say, like, here's the review of the Samsung Q2U, right? Yeah. Versus, like, here's how I feel about, like, how you should, you know, show up, like, you know, but continuing to do that for the last couple years, especially last year, it really worked. And it worked in a bunch of ways. It worked because it did kind of rebrand me, but it also worked because I had to then see the gaps where I wasn't fulfilling that role yet and do the work to get there, right? So, okay, if I'm going to put myself out as a leader, as a strategist, where are the holes? You know, it's really easy to say, like, why don't they let me do that? And then you're like, oh, now I'm doing it. Okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to practice? What do I need to do to really, like, the door is open. It's up to me. And so once I put myself in that seat, I learned, I grew, you know, and then in the last probably 3 months, I decided I wanted to apply for a full-time job. I've worked for myself or freelance forever and found a role that really fit. And I'll be starting it in a couple of days. And I think that process, I really leaned on the relationships that I've built in the last couple of years to help me write the resume, to help me weather those punches in the face, like what we talked about with Jen, right? Like, it's really easy to say, you're going to have to apply to a whole bunch of jobs and you're not going to get the first one. And eventually you will. Like, it's really easy to say, oh, 1 out of 10 jobs you might get or something. But when you apply for a job and you get excited about it and you don't get it, it doesn't feel like, oh, like, this is just 1 of the 10. It feels like, oh my God, what have I done with my life? Like,
I am horrible.
I will never have a job. No one will ever hire me. What was I even thinking? Why did I try this? Right. And so you really need people in your life that you believe when they say, like, keep going.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that you did that was so impressive, and I don't even think you realized throughout that process, you had, like, your irons in the fire in several fires, right? And there were potential paths for you. Like, it might be this job, might be this job, might be this job. You just kept walking forward with an open mind. And it was like, wow, the thing that presented itself to you was something maybe you would have never put on your vision board. You know?
Right.
But is potentially, you know, you're about to start. Like,
super exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I hear that a lot with people. If I'm like, oh, have you tried this? And they're like, well, that's not my experience. And, and it's constant excuses of why not to even go down the path. And you didn't. You just kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I know I am is like a bulldozer. Like I keep going. Like I just freaking keep going. I'm not a big leaper. You know what I mean? Like there's some people that are like, they'll take a huge risk. They'll take a big leap. I'm not that person, but I am someone who will just like, I will just not stop walking.
Yeah. There's strength in that. Do you relate to that at all, Jen?
Oh, yeah. So much.
I think I'm more the leaper. And then I'm like, oh, I broke my ankle, so I have to take some time off. You know, it didn't work out. So I learned a lot from your process. So thank you.
And vice versa. I think that's what's so great about that group is that we're able to show up for each other in a way. And I think we've talked about this, like, it's not just that you're there and you say the right stuff, but that I know where it's coming from too. And so, like, I believe it, right? You know my qualifications, you know the career space that we're all in, like, so that it doesn't feel like mom saying, like, keep going, honey, this is the job for you, you know? Like, and there's a place for mom. Thank God that mom will think everything I do is amazing. But it's different to have people who are in the business saying, like, yeah, you can do this. Yes, keep going.
Yeah. I think about the recent message I left in there where I was like, dude, I'm not living up to my potential. And, you know, I have a lot of friendships that they'd be like, oh, no, you are. Look at it. You did this and you did this and you did this. But that's not what you did. You both asked.
Right.
You were like, well, what do you mean by that? First of all, because it made me then go a little deeper with that. And then I started to realize, like, there's just more in me. I want more for my life. And it wasn't that I wasn't necessarily doing, because we're all doing.
Right. It almost sounds at first blush like it's a negative, like I'm not living to my potential. But what I heard was like, there's even more in you. Like, I love that. Even more, even better. It's not like you're not doing and you're not in a great place. It's like, there's even more that Jackie can do, you know?
Yeah. And I think when I first went in there, it was sort of a negative. It was like, I'm not living up to my potential. Boo-hoo. And then when you started asking the questions, it was like, no, it's just that there's more in me. Like, and it made me think of like when I was a kid and an elementary school teacher would be like, not working to our potential. And I was like, I used to get so mad. Like, how do you know? How do you know what my potential is? And now as a 51-year-old, I'm like, I know what my potential is and I'm not living up to it. And so, Jen, is it possible that it's not about doing, but it's about living up to who you know you could be?
100%. 100%.
Little circle back.
Yeah. Very
nice job, Jackie.
Very nice on
Thank
that.
you.
Well, and it's funny because I've actually been doing a lot of reading lately. I started reading a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And then the same guy that wrote that, Ryan Holiday, wrote another book about courage. And there's so much in it. And then part of my journaling practice now is doing like this daily stoic writing prompt. And so much of that, though, is about living up to your potential. And I think that's one of the things that I don't know that we could have named it initially, but I think that's one of the things that brings us together is that we're all trying to do that, whether it's personally, professionally, whatever. And I think we're really great cheerleaders for each other for that. And not just like the mom, oh, you can do it, but asking those deeper questions to really make us sit with it and think, and then take that right action to go do the thing that we're saying that we want to do.
Right.
To get that potential.
And it's not always about doing.
No.
Because I feel
like we just had this conversation in the
I think it was this morning. Yeah.
Well, because I can imagine somebody listening, like if I were listening to this right now, I'd be like, well, I'm not living up to my potential and I don't know how, and I don't know how to define what my potential is or what the areas are or all of those things. It's kind of like when you go to a conference and you feel all inspired and all like up here, and then you're like, I don't know what to do to follow up. And so how did you both figure out the areas where you wanted to live up to it a little bit more?
I'll say, I don't even know what my potential is, but I'm curious to go down some of these different paths to figure out what that is.
I love that.
And, you know, if I have to bulldoze like Marion, then so be it. But I'm curious. And I do think some of this comes with age too. I don't care anymore about looking stupid. I go to jujitsu 3 days a week and I look like an idiot rolling around with people that are half my age, but I'm showing up and I'm doing the thing. And I don't have any big jujitsu dreams of winning all these big championships, but I know that I can go there and show up and be the best that I can be and hopefully help my teammates like reach their potential and do the things that they want to do. And I think so much of it at this point is just following that curiosity and figuring out what that is rather than it's got to be this path and has to be in this profession and all of that. Like, who's got time for that anymore?
Yeah. I think I need to add curiosity. Like I've been talking about curiosity for years. Like I got to add that to my list of words.
It's such a good one.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is that if you have curiosity and you have stubbornness or determination or whatever that is, you can achieve almost anything. Like with that combination.
Yeah. Curiosity and resilience, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like know that and half the shit that we face.
Patience.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with us, right?
Right.
So if you go back to your job search, you just kept staying curious and they sort of, I remember one time I was looking for a job and I had 2 interviews and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to choose. I'm going to have to choose. Chances are, if you keep going with curiosity, like there is no choice by the end of it. Like, you've chosen.
Yeah.
Either you've chosen or they've chosen, like depending on some things just go away. And I just remember the stress I put on myself to quote unquote choose when there was never actually a choice.
I would add, you were asking about tools and I think patience, like I know that definitely comes with age, but one of the things I've realized is the power of just time. Talk about friendships, right? And a lot of the best friendships in my life aren't necessarily based on common interest. It's just time. It's just time together or time with shared experience, like time. And what makes you expert at something? Time. What makes you achieve what? How do you network? How do you build a network? Time. So much of it is just sticking patiently with something like with jujitsu, right? I mean, not to say like, I'm sure your determination and your skill and your willingness and your ability to pick up techniques, like those all matter. But like you said, you just keep showing up. It's time. That's what's making you better at it.
And I didn't cry on the mat today or feel like I was going to. So, and you all know that that's been a thing lately. And I just, I'm like, I'll still show up and see what happens and hope I don't cry as I'm getting smashed. No worries.
That's one of the best things about that group is hearing the struggles and watching, like they never stop you guys. You know what I mean? It's never like, I want to complain so that I have an excuse not to achieve. It's like, I want to complain so that I can achieve.
Yeah.
Same with you. It's rare that when we come in and we're just like, this is it. And I'm in this fixed mindset and it happens. It's like, this is where I am. I'm never going to get out of it. The world sucks.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, an hour later, we come back and we've had some food, Jen.
Yeah.
Suddenly we see things more clearly.
It's like, never mind.
Yeah. But we started the conversation with the words and sort of the metrics, right, of the word. So I want you to tell me something about this year, about yourself, about just anything that we can go back next year, because by the way, next January, we'll be doing this episode again. And that you want to then measure. You want to go back and listen to this a year from now and go, hey, I did that, or I was that, or it doesn't have to be some big bodacious goal. What do you think?
For me, I will have recorded 26 episodes of the Brassy broadcast.
Nice.
Okay. 26. All right.
26
I don't even
is
have
the
to write
number.
it down. I could just play.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Awesome. And tell everybody a little bit about the Brassy broadcast and what they would expect from listening to those amazing 26 episodes.
In those amazing 26 episodes, it always comes back to what am I curious about right now? And right now, I'm very curious about people that are showing up, that are creating, that are doing the things and having an impact. And how are they doing that? So I'm going to have some interviews with some podcast hosts, actually a couple clients that I've worked with that are really making an impact and making a difference in people's lives. And how are they doing that? How are they managing all of that? And how does it fit into their lives? I feel like it's almost like how I built this for a podcast, but it's mostly conversations so I can figure out how to do the thing I want to do. I'm just going to talk to smart people that are doing it.
Love it.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Marion?
So I'm going to push back a little bit because, the contrarian in me, because I am starting a new job that I'm very excited about. My sort of short-term commitment is really to not set expectations, but to be open, because I don't know what the challenges are yet and what the opportunities are and how much it will fill my life. But I have kind of a 2-year goal, which is I do want to develop my own voice and content more, right? Something that I can really focus on. And there's a couple of different directions that can go. And so I'm committed over 2 years to find that. This year, I really want to be open. There's a bunch of possibilities. I've got things lined up that I want to try, but I kind of want to leave myself open to see what this job means in my life and wait before I kind of set that course.
What I'm hearing though, Marion, is that you could listen back a year from now and ask yourself, did I approach the year as the open, curious human being that I said I would be? So you actually could measure that. I'm not talking about big goals. I'm talking about what is something that you're committed to this year so we can then look back next year.
Right.
And just to have that openness is huge, I think.
And I'm actually willing to accept that I might 2 months in be like, this is the thing, and get all in on one thing and not be open anymore. I will give you one of my words.
Okay.
That I kept secret. One of my words was laughter, a laugh. It's a lot like sparkle, right? I can probably measure that. I'm going to see if there was more laughter in my year.
Yeah.
I'll put that out there.
Well, you both make me laugh in so many ways. And you make me think, and you make me feel, and you make me, most of all, feel very safe in who I am as enough, which is a pretty rare and special place to be. So thank you both.
Well, you are fucking enough.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I want to know what you're going to measure. Like, what's your thing that you're going to come back to in a year?
I am going to, oh shit, I didn't even think about this. It's coming back at me. Well, my main word, and I think I'm going to have like two like co-words, like the captain and then the co-captains. But my main word is flow.
Nice.
And
Love it.
I'm over the idea of like forcing things to happen, right? Like obviously if you have an idea, you want to do something or you want to be something or you want whatever it is, you got to do the work to get there. But I'm done trying to force things if they're not there. So flow, I think I can measure even the things that come into my life. Did they come into my life in some sort of flow state? I just think of that toy when my kids were little with the ball, and you'd pull the sides of the handles of the ball and all the shapes come out. And then the ball around it has all these different shapes. And you're just trying to like the kid figures out like, oh, this is a triangle. It goes in the triangle hole. Like, and then all the shapes end up in the ball, and then you open it up and you jump them out again and you do it again. Like, I feel like I have the ability to just take a shape and just try to make it work. And eventually I'll split the plastic open so that the triangle fit into the circle because I broke the damn thing.
Yes.
As opposed to just sitting back and going like, being curious and taking a look from a broader perspective and then going, oh, there's the triangle right there. And it's like, there's no sweat. There's no stress. You know, I don't have to be constantly busy. I think that's part of it too, is like, gotta make it work. And I just, no, I'm going to see what's out there for me, you know?
I may or may not share that quality.
I think the reason that we are so successful as human beings together is that we all share that quality with a desire to not.
Yes. I heard a great phrase, and I forget the name of the person who told me, but she's like, how far can you go if you're going with the current of the river, right? Like if you step into the river and you go in that direction, you'll go so much further, so much faster than when you either walk next to it or you try to go the other way.
Yeah. And it's like we've been taught, right? I think Gen X especially is like, work hard, work hard. And, you know, you see people out there who are doing the thing they love to do, and they're not necessarily, I mean, maybe they're working hard, but it just flows better. You know, I'm going to go with the flow. So talk to me next year when I'm like, shut up, I didn't say that.
All right. So we have flow, we have laughter. And wait, Jen, what were we going to measure you against?
Oh, you're just measuring me against number of podcasts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
26 is the magic number.
26 is the magic number. And now I have to do it because I've said it here.
26 is a good number. It's a big number, but it's a reasonable and manageable number. And I think that's another thing that we've all learned.
Yeah.
Because in the past, at least for me, would be, I'm going to do 365 podcasts this year. And then I would get to 12 and I would miss 13. And I'm like, F it, screw it, forget it. I'm a loser, you know?
Yep.
And so, you know, at least get half of them done in the first half of the year and you're good to go. So,
yeah, it's all about sustainable and integration and managing all the things so that we can flow.
Awesome. Thank you both for doing this.
Thank you.
You're awesome, Jackie.
Oh, you're awesome, Marion.
No, you're awesome.
Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jackie.
You can follow Marion and Jen on all the social channels and also YouTube. So check out the show notes for the links to that. Before I go, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for listening and being the reason I created this show. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for showing up for yourself. And thank you for wanting more for your life. I love doing this together. I have a bunch of really cool episodes coming up, but also I want to hear from you. What is something you want to hear on the Grown Ass Woman's Guide? Email me, hello@grownasswoman.guide. I want to know. And as always, hit the favorite or follow button on your favorite podcast app so you get notified when the next episode is out. I appreciate you so much. Until next time, remember, you are a grown-ass woman. Act accordingly. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut.